Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Way is in Training. This is a podcast exploring how warriors should train and fight, as well as how they should live. We will talk about technique, but we'll also dive deep into fitness, mindset, and strategy. We will explore leadership and philosophy as well. So whether you are a young soldier, a veteran police officer, a responsible armed citizen, or simply someone looking for an authentic life, let's examine how the lessons of combat and preparation for it can help us fulfill our potential. Let's explore the way together and learn how the discipline of training can show us our true selves amidst the chaos of life. Hey everybody, on this episode I've got Jorge Tierno Ray, a Marine Corps veteran from Spain. And we're going to talk a little bit about his training and kind of how we met in the virtual world and just kind of take it from there. So before we get started, Jorge, you mind telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm not a combat veteran. You know, I'm active right now. I'm a Spanish Marine Corps. Here, you can stay in the Marines or in the military all your life till the retirement. And we retire with 61 years old. I'm just a captain, because I resigned to any chance to be promoted, just to stay in the same place all the time. I don't want to move all around Spain. So I resigned to promotion to avoid that. So my career is just as a captain, but I'm very happy about that. I'm in a post I like, so no problem about that. Currently, I'm doing maybe just paperwork, you know. At first, when I was a first lieutenant, when I left the Naval College years ago in 2004. I was 2 years as a platoon commander in our infantry brigade. Then 1 year as a military police commander, company commander. And then I were stationed here in the area. I'm living here since 2008. Is the opposite of where I'm from. I'm from the northwest, and currently I'm living in the southeast of Spain, of 1,000 kilometers apart. But this area is most of the time sunny, so I prefer this place. And we have the privilege of having range available in my unit, so I can train in the range whenever I want, mostly when it's free from the using by the units here stationed in this area. So that's good. But currently, and since 2010, I was doing just teaching and training the staff with our guys, grants, NCOs, and officers. And I lived just 2 years the Marines, because you have this chance here. You can leave for a moment and get back later. So I lived just 2 years to work for Amazon. I wanted to try it. And they were looking for military active or retired military. So I spent just 2 years in Amazon, and I got back to the Marines in 2022. I left the 2020 and get back in the 2022. And I'm in the same post since then in the headmaster office of our Spanish Marine Corps school.
So, and like we met through the ACE virtual shooting thing. Like you were actually the first person I shot with online. And I think we were talking early on because we were kind of chasing each other on the leaderboards a little bit. And from what I've seen through social media, your shooting in the real world is definitely just as good as your shooting in the virtual world. So you've definitely put some time in. Do you compete at all? Have you done any competition over there? Any USPSA or IPSC, or I guess it wouldn't be USPSA, it would be IPSC over there. Anything like that?
Yeah, I'm in an area in Spain that there is no IPSC competition. So I have to move a few kilometers to the east or the west to reach any match. But I've never competed yet. I'm starting right now a team here in our area, a Spanish Navy team of practical shooters. We hope to start competing in April or May. We have to take a clearance. You need a bit of training here to be allowed to compete in IPSC. And that would be my first experience competing. Till now, I compete just against myself and in the virtual world against others.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting to me because our gun culture here is very different than Europe, obviously. How does it work for firearms for you guys for competition? I mean, are you allowed to buy them? Can you keep them in your house? Do you have to store them at the range? I know it's different in different countries. Like, how is that for you guys?
Yeah, okay. We are in, I think this is the most restrictive country in Europe with firearms. You can go to Poland or Switzerland and they are very open to firearms. But here, any citizen can't have a handgun for defense. You don't have a concealed carry permit available to anybody. You have to justify very well why you need a concealed carry permit, and they are just a few who are allowed to do so. But the military, we are privileged guys, and the policemen, we have a different chance to have firearms because for being a professional, you can have a handgun for defense, besides of your issued handguns or rifle. But
okay, so you're allowed to have a personally owned weapon then?
Yeah, just some kinds of firearms, because the military caliber, it's not allowed to civilians here. So I can't have a 5.56, a 223 here. You are not allowed to. I can have a 222, but not 223. It's really stupid. And you can have a 300 Winchester Magnum, but you can't have a 223 or 308 in a semi-automatic rifle. But you can have a 308 if it's a bolt rifle or
a bolt gun. Yeah. So now, what about 9mm? Does that apply for 9mm as well?
Yeah, we have the chance to buy handguns, but just for officers and NCOs in the military, you can have 3 handguns. And if you go to the sports world, you can buy a few more, but just for competing in a range. You can't conceal carry those guns. But I can conceal carry one of those 3 guns I can have in that permit.
Now, the competition guns. Yeah, no, I've heard of similar things, and I think like Hong Kong is similar, right? I think like places like that. But so the competition guns, are you allowed to have them in your home, or do you have to leave them at the range and lock them up at the range?
Yes, but you need a bolt, a specific bolt. It need to be certified as a high security bolt, something like that. Not a bank bolt, but you need a specific kind of bolts to keep your handguns. That's for civilians mostly. But if it's a defense handgun, you don't use a bolt most of the time. You are not required to do so strictly, but you are responsible of keeping your handguns safe. But in the case of civilians, they could be inspected by the government officials. In this case, the law enforcement officers that from the civil guard can visit your home and check that you are complying with the firearms regulations in Spain. So we get all the restrictions, but the criminals don't have any restriction, because they are not going to apply for a concealed carry permit.
Yeah, they just don't care. They're going to break the law. I mean, if that's why they're criminals, right? I've never understood that. Like, there's a political element in our country as well that would like to see similar rules put in place, right? But the problem is the bad guys aren't going to follow the rules anyway. So the only people you're inhibiting are the people that follow the law, which shows you what their motives really are. The motives really aren't controlling the crime. because it's not going to have any effect on that.
We don't have high crime rates here, not very high, but we don't feel very safe currently because you hear a lot of cases of home invaders. Maybe just 2, 3, or 4 you hear, it's a lot for you because you don't know how many cases are the exact number. But you worry about your security, but you can't do anything at your home because if you don't have a firearm, what do you do with a home invader? Please stay out. Or what do you want? Just money or the TV? Okay, don't worry. If you are not going to hurt me, I don't have any problem because the insurance is going to pay for what you take. But you don't know if they are going to hurt you. So you are unsafe because you can't defend at your home. So we have very strong doors here. You know, and bars in the windows. Mostly everybody has bars in the windows in the first floor. You know, but
yeah, and
we are very safe compared to other countries.
Right. I mean, I'm sure the crime rate there isn't bad, but it's never about figure out a way to articulate it, right? Like, I don't think it's about necessarily the frequency of the need.
Yeah,
it's the severity of the need, right? I mean, it's not like it happens doesn't happen often in the US either, but when it happens, you really, really need to protect yourself because it's going to be a bad thing if you can't, you know, and no, I feel for you guys on that part for sure.
And we have some problems with immigration too, but with our immigration is different from yours. You know, we have migrants from the south, and you know what's in the south. It's not Mexico, it's Africa. So you get here any kind of people. Maybe they are good people, but maybe they are criminals in their countries. That they are running away from their countries because they are going to be killed there for what they did.
Well, and that's the issue, right? It's not really about where someone is from. It's about the fact that if they're not vetted, you don't know what kind of a person they are or why they left or why they want to come to your country, right? So it's not, you know, it's not about them being a certain culture or background or nationality necessarily per se. It's more about who are these people really and why are they here? Why did they leave there? Why did they want to leave there? What happened that made them leave? You know, what are they looking for? What advantage are they trying to get here? Right? Or in Spain, in your case. You know, and that's something I think that people that want these open borders policies don't really think about. They don't really think about the reality of human nature, you know?
Yeah.
And it could be just like the frequency of needing a gun we talked about a minute ago. You know, I'm sure the vast majority of people are good, decent people, but that doesn't help you if you run into the small percentage that's not, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, statistics are good, but there is no statistic when you are the victim. I don't bother about the statistics if I'm going to be the victim. And the statistic says that if you are a victim once, you have more chances of being a victim twice. Yeah.
So back to training. So how hard is it for you to practice then? I know you have the range time, but like, is this something that, like, how many rounds do you get to shoot a year, do you think?
Yeah, I'm shooting right now more than ever because this year I get ammo for training to create this team that we are creating here in this area with Navy guys and Marine guys. But before I just shoot maybe 1,000 a year, 2,000 a year. I'm trying now to go to the range every week and shoot about 200, 300 rounds. And mostly I do dry practice before ACE, and now most of the time I'm doing ACE practice because it's amazing. I've never shoot a match, but I'm used to the match because of ACE, because I can shoot any kind of target. I don't have to prepare the stage. I don't have to collect the brass. I don't have to tape the hits. It's great. In an hour, you can do thousands of shots for free. And then in the range, you know, there is a transfer from the virtual world to the real world.
No, there absolutely is. I've proven that for myself. I mean, obviously, you know, it's only a study sample of one when you look at what you've done yourself. But like I've shot drills on the same day in ACE and gone to the range and shot them in live fire, and the performance is the same. It's right there. You know, if anything, I'm a little bit better in live fire than I am in ACE, because I think it's actually a little bit more difficult in ACE than it is in the real world. And the other thing that's really cool about it, and you touched on this a second ago, and this is one of the things I love, is the volume you can do. I mean, like you said, you don't have to reset targets. You don't have to clean anything up. You don't have to bring the targets out and set them up. And unlike dry fire, you can literally do every kind of moving target, you know, complex arrays of walls and targets and movement that are very hard to replicate in dry fire. And then you have that feedback, because it gives you, that's the other thing that's great, is you get instant feedback on the hits and the times without having to scroll through the timer or walk down and count your hits, right? It just shows you right there. Your hit factor is calculated for you. And all of that gives you such a high level of feedback. And it's so quick. It happens so fast. You can get so many repetitions in. Like I'm over 760,000 since they started counting the rounds in ACE. And I actually had ACE before they started counting them. So I'm probably at about, I'd like to think I'm about at 1 million, right? Somewhere in there. Yeah. And it's, I mean, no, there's no physical recoil, but your dot or your iron sights are moving in your vision just like they would in real life. So you have to have that visual patience, right? Like I think it's a game changer. I think it's going to totally change the way people train over time.
You know, I just joined ACE because you said it. Because I asked you, is that really good for training? And you said, yes, it's a game changer. So I joined it because at first I was very reluctant about this kind of virtual reality simulators, because I couldn't believe you would find the same things inside the virtual simulator that in the range. But once you get inside, you made up your mind right away, because I presented it to two guys, and they needed just a minute using it to be convinced they need it.
Yeah.
So they are buying it.
No, I remember we had that conversation. That's the first time we ever talked online. And I don't remember how long I had it then, but I was already convinced. I was already seeing improvements, you know. And, you know, they did a study, right? They did this study, and they talk about how, multiple studies actually, about how an event that is visualized in very high detail is as real to the brain as a real event. And I think that's part of the benefit of the ACE, is basically it's assisting you in visualizing the real thing, because it looks so much like the real thing in your brain. Or your brain thinks of it so much like the real thing, I guess is a better way to put it, right? That's how the studies talk about it. And I think like the really good shooters that get the most out of dry fire, the most naturally talented, I have a suspicion that one of the things that makes them so naturally talented is an innate ability to visualize in great detail. So when they're dry firing, even though it's just the little miniature targets and it's not real props, in their brain, they're treating it like it's the real thing, which is hard for most people to do, right? So I think ACE is kind of a game changer in that way too, because it helps people that maybe aren't as naturally talented at visualization. It gets them to be able to visualize in great detail and very realistically, because it shows it to you. And it's very easy in your brain, when you're inside that headset, to feel like you're in the real thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know that there are two kinds of shooters. Those that shoot cardboard targets, and those who shoot bone and flesh targets, because they say that cardboard doesn't return fire, so that's useless for training, you know. But when you train in ACE, and you don't realize that you are really training for the range, because when you go to the range, you get a high performance compared to before using ACE. I shot first time in the range the Chasing Alphas Mini, and
Yeah.
it was my first time, and I got almost the same hit factor, considering that recoil makes you a bit slower, but I got almost the same hit factor, and I couldn't believe it because I haven't trained so much with live fire to get those that performance in the first time.
Yeah, those results. For me, I did a video on this one. It was the transition hell drill, the one that was created by Mike Seeklander and Max Michel.
Yeah,
And I ran that one, and I've done it with other drills too, but this was the one that I made the biggest like presentation on, right? I ran it in ACE and then went to the range immediately after and ran it on the range. And I actually shot it better on the range, not by much, just like, a fraction of a hit factor, but I shot it better on the range than I shot in ACE. And
yeah,
like that for me, like I said, I know it's a small sample, right? It's just me. It's not like it's a real study, but it proved it to me right there. It was just the carryover, I think, is phenomenal. I really do.
yeah. I will try to get the ACE as a training system for our team, so they can use it for training at home. Mm, the best way to train is having your own ACE at home, so you can train all the time you want. But maybe just having a shared ACE, you can change every 2 days or every 3 days. One guy use it for 2 days or 3 days a week, and the other guy use it for 2 or 3 days a week at home. And I'm sure they are going to improve a lot. But I will have to check it with some data.
The Houston Police Academy bought ACE headsets and handsets for their recruits and did like a little in-house study on it. And they got really good results with the recruits from them training in ACE a couple times a week. Because obviously they didn't take them home, right? They were there at the academy. But they showed big improvements just from using that in the academy as well as their live fire. I mean, there's definitely something to it. And like I said, it's not like, I think that the people who are very talented at mindful practice, at being able to really put their mind into the reps and visualize what would actually be happening in the real world, people like that would probably not see as much of a benefit from it because they're already so good at visualizing what's going on. But even they would still see the benefit because you've got all the moving targets and all the other stuff that you can't do in dry fire, right?
Yeah, and in the live fire range, I don't have so many targets available. Blades, blade racks, bobbers, swingers, all the air targets. It's amazing that what you can do in ACE. So
yeah,
you get
the
used
drop
to
turners and the
swingers.
clamshells and all of it.
I don't have a swinger right now in the range available. So I'm training swingers without having real swingers. So I guess that when I have the chance to shoot in a match, a swinger, that would be my first time in the real life.
And I guarantee you, just from knowing how well you perform in ACE and having shot with you in there and seeing your scores on the leaderboards, I bet you when you shoot one for real the first time, it's going to be like you've shot them 1,000 times because you have. You visualized it 1,000 times.
Yeah. The problem is that many people is very reluctant to use ACE or virtual reality simulators. They don't believe on it right now because they need to try it by themselves to believe in it. But once they try it, they get convinced right away. So I think this is not the future. This is the present right now. All the other simulators, the smokeless range or all that kind of simulators with a projector and a camera and a laser are low performers, are not the same.
No, that's definitely that's obsolete technology, I think now, I mean and I think that the virtual stuff is going to keep getting better and better, obviously, right? Like as the software improves and as the headsets improve and the handsets improve, it's going to get even better. And it's already amazing. So it's going to be, it's definitely the way things are going to go moving forward. And like, you know, talking about live fire, right? We talked about round count a minute ago. I typically shoot a very high round count every year. Since getting ACE, I've dropped my round count significantly and made better improvements than I used to shooting a lot more live fire.
Yeah.
You know, I'm live firing a lot less and still making improvements. Right.
Yeah. One of the benefits of using the virtual simulator, I guess, is you don't get tired as much as shooting live fire ammo. You are shooting all the time, but you don't get tired so much, though your wrists are feeling it. You get exhausted for so much tension with the stage, but it's not the same as the live fire. So you have the chance to do a lot more in the simulator than in the real life, and you spend just 1 hour and you are shooting 2,000-3,000 rounds in the virtual simulator. So you are doing the same 2,000-3,000 times, and maybe in the real life you are going to do just 200 or 300 or in the same time.
Yeah, no, you definitely can get a much higher repetition count, you know, for sure. And it's also going back to the round count issue, right? Like, I mean, ammunition is expensive. You know, I used to have a job where I got my ammo. I don't have that job anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And most people don't. Most people don't have that luxury, right? So this gives people the chance to get a lot more in without spending the money. Because if you look at the money compared to the cost of that many rounds of ammo, it's far, far cheaper. You know, I mean, it's a fraction of the cost, a minuscule fraction. And the other thing that I really like about it, you know who Eric Graffel is, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
The IPSC shooter? Yeah. So
it's a god.
Yeah. He shoots an insane amount every year.
Yes.
You know, like a huge amount, right? But he also has the support system to enable him to do that. He's not setting up the stages. He's not loading the ammo, right? Everything is basically presented to him. And I'm not knocking him. He's an amazing shooter and from what it seems, a great guy. But nobody has that opportunity. Yeah. Nobody can just go to work and you've got 12 stages set up for you and your magazines are loaded and you've got all this ammo and all you do is shoot, right? Like that is not a normal condition. And what I'm trying to do in my own training right now is really immerse myself in the virtual practice and try to get the same kind of round count that he gets in live fire in the virtual world. It's the only way somebody who doesn't have that support system will ever be able to do that.
Yes.
You know? And that sheer number of repetitions, I think, there's something magical about getting that volume of practice. If you do it right, you still have to be doing correct repetitions. You can't be giving yourself bad habits. You've got to treat it like training and not a video game. You know what I mean? But I think if you do that and you get that volume of like really intentional, mindful repetition, really paying attention to what you're doing, that's going to have huge benefits, I think, for your shooting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I heard an interview with Eric Graffel that he said he's not doing any dry practice because
he just shoots live fire.
Yeah, he doesn't need it because he's doing live fire all the time. But mortals need the dry fire or virtual fire. It's better because you get a lot of feedback and it's more fun than just the dry fire. And you are doing the same as in the range all the time. If you are doing it good, you are going to do it good in the range.
Yep. No, absolutely. And you can. The other thing I think that's really important that like separates the really top guys from everybody else is the opportunity and willingness to experiment, right? And this gives you also a huge amount of opportunity for that because you're not spending money on ammo. You're not moving walls and stages around, targets around. You're not resetting things. You can just go, okay, this run, I'm going to try this and see what happens. Or, I did this full run on the stage and I didn't like those 3 targets in the middle. So I'll just shoot those about 20 times and figure out what I need to do better and play around with different variables and different things, right? And then go back and shoot the whole stage again. And that sort of practice is really difficult for people to do in live fire, right? I mean, it takes a long time to be able to do that in live fire. But like you said, in the virtual fire, you can just simply just do as many, just real quick turnover, real quick cyclic rate of repetition, right? And I think that's really valuable too, I think,
Yeah, sure. Because I spent just 30 minutes preparing the range to start shooting. And I spent just 1 minute switching on the Meta Quest to start shooting in the virtual world. So it's amazing. I can do 5 minutes in the virtual range before dinner, and there's no problem. My wife doesn't get angry because I spend just 5 minutes, just when the dinner is ready.
I'll even before I shoot a match, I'll get up and I'll do it in the morning before I shoot the match. Used to be I would get up and dry fire before the match, right? But now I can get up and I can actually run some stages virtually before going and shooting stages for real, which is kind of a different feeling than the normal kind of just a few draws and a few reloads that everybody does. Yeah, no, it's huge. So I have a question for you, because obviously by the time you started doing this sort of training, you had some, pretty significant amount of experience as somebody that carries a gun for a living. How has this changed your perspective on firearms training for the military, for law enforcement, for people like that? Like how, and I don't just mean like their opportunity to use ACE, right? I mean, that, of course, that's a great idea, but like how do you look at things differently? How do you look at technique differently? How do you look at how to practice differently than what you used to before?
Currently, I think that before I didn't thought the same, but currently I think that competition is the way to train for combat or for defense, because it's asking from you the higher performance you can reach. So competition is the best way of training, and you are going to compete against not yourself, but others that maybe they are better than you. Like if you compete against you, will be the best. If you compete with a friend, if you are the best, you are going to be the best all the time. But when you compete with others from all around your area or all around your state, your country, or even other countries, you always will know that you are not the best in the world. So you need to train more. So there is no end to this pilgrimage. You are going to be training all the time, and that's very good, because many military and police guys think they are very good because they have never competed against anybody, so they think they are great. And sometimes you pick the best shooter in a unit and you try it against other guy, and they realize that he's not as good as we thought. That's competition. So it's an open minds.
And I know, like for me, and I agree with everything you just said, I'm a huge believer in the value of competition as training for combat, right? Training for conflict. And there's always the people that argue, but tactics or mindset or everything else. And yes, all of that matters too. You need all of that as well. But if you can't hit the target fast enough, then none of that matters, right? That is the primal attribute you need. You need that more than anything else.
You are going to die with a high mindset.
Yes, exactly, right? Your tactics will look great as you're getting shot because you didn't hit the other guy, Yeah. And I think people lose sight of that. And I do think that there's also a flip side of that with people that do nothing but competition, is they get kind of a false sense of confidence because they don't understand how it differs from conflict. But I don't think you'll ever be, there is no way to be as good a shooter as you have the potential to be without doing some sort of competition. I don't think. Like you have to do that. You have to get that pressure cooker and test it and figure out what works and what doesn't. And, fight hard with your training for that little fraction of an improvement in speed or accuracy, that little piece, right? And add those up as you get better and better. And I mean, is it theoretically possible you could train on your own and develop skill like that? I suppose, but I don't know anybody that really has. Like, I don't think that's ever happened. I've never seen someone who shot at like a master or grandmaster level that didn't compete.
Yes.
Like nobody gets to that level without the competition.
I'm talking without being a competitor, but I fully believe that, and I think that competition is the biggest stressor. So you are looking for combat stress, you can use the competition stress for training for that. And if you have a mindset, the right mindset, you are going to realize what are the different, because you can't expose from cover in the real life, and you are exposing yourself in competition. You are not using cover, but you know it, and you know that in combat you are going to use the properly the cover available. So there is no problem about that.
No, I agree. And it's the stage in a match is a drill. It's a shooting drill. It's meant to measure athletic performance with a handgun at high speed and high levels of accuracy, right? It's not meant to be a real world problem at all. And when people realize that, it's kind of a mental switch, that once you understand that, it shouldn't, the old argument about, that'll get you killed in the streets fades away, because you got to realize that everything you do to work on your shooting is a drill. Everything.
Yeah.
You're not actually in a gunfight when you're on the range with paper targets. You're working on your shooting, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is a pretty obvious thing these days. I think people have started to understand that. But then going back to your comment about stress, right? I can tell you that, and everyone I know who's both got combat experience and has competed, that I know has agreed with me. I have never been as stressed out in a gunfight as I am in a competition.
Yeah.
Competition is more stressful than the fight. It's a different feeling,
Yes.
And I think, I've got some, I've got some theories on it.
Though I don't have combat experience or competition experience, but I can imagine that, because the body doesn't know who is providing that stress when you feel your heart beating at a high pace, and when you are sweating because of the moment of the tension, or I'm competing against somebody and I want to win. So I guess that is huge.
And I think it's not just that, right? So like they did a study on what people fear the most. And people fear public speaking is in general, not everyone, but in general, people fear public speaking more than anything else. Like they're more afraid of public speaking than dying in a fire, right?
Yeah.
And I think that has a clue as to why competition is so stressful. No one wants to look bad. When you're in a real fight, you're not thinking about that. You're just thinking about winning the fight. But at a competition, everybody's watching you when you run the stage. And like you said, some of them are better than you, right? And they're watching you run it, and your scores are going to be on the internet forever, right? And I think that element of, if I do badly, everyone's going to know and I'm going to look bad. I think that is what gives the amount of stress. And I think that's just human nature, And
that's the way to identify. We say here in Spanish, translated to English, smoke sellers. And it's the same as snake oil salesman.
Ah, gotcha.
Those are never watched hitting the target. They film themselves shooting, but not the hits. They film just themselves, but they are not filming the targets, the hits, the time, the hit factor. They just do a performance, a show, and you watch them and they say, what the fuck is this? And those are the guys that say, no, combat is quite different from a competition. The cardboard doesn't return fire, so this is useless. Yeah. but they don't hit the target at the speed.
So a guy I've known for a long time who also, he's a firearms instructor. He also has combat experience, and he's a masterclass shooter in like 5 divisions in USPSA, right? And he said something I really liked. He goes, no, the targets aren't shooting back. If you can't tell the difference between a cardboard target and an armed gunman trying to kill you, you have bigger problems than I can fix in a 2-day shooting class.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, so I mean,
It makes lots of excuses.
Yeah, it's different, but it's a measure of your hard skills at shooting and moving and thinking under pressure, all of which matter in the real world.
I can't hear you.
How about now? Have you got me now?
Wait, it's my bad. Wait. Now?
How about now? Can you hear me?
Oh, there's a problem with my computer. Solved.
Okay. All right. We can edit that out, so that's no big deal. I'm going to go back to what I was talking about. Let's see, where was I? I'm trying to think of what was the last thing I said.
We were talking about the difference between cardboard and an armed threat.
And then the real thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what it is. You know, no, it's not a gunfight. The targets aren't shooting back at you. There's no tactics involved. But what it actually is a measure of your ability to shoot fast and accurately under pressure and move well. And all of those things matter in a gunfight. So people look at it the wrong way that say it's not the same. You're building the skills and attributes you need for the fight. One of the things I hate that people say, it makes me crazy, is train like you fight. Because it's nonsense, right? There's no boxer that does nothing but spar full contact every time he trains.
I have a joke about that, because if you are sleeping at home at night and you get a home invader, you are going to get up maybe nude, you know, because you sleep nude. Okay, so you go to the range nude, train as you fight. It's quite stupid.
It really is. You should train for the fight, right? Train the abilities you need to win the fight. Don't try to replicate the fight every time you train, especially because there's value in that. There's value in that sort of testing, but that's a test, right? That's not how you build skill. You build skill through intelligent training applied to build the individual blocks of skill you need, right? Whether you're talking about, you know, draw speed, transition accuracy and speed, you know, trigger presses, grip structure, right? Or whether you're talking about more like physical attributes, you know, like how can I explode out of a position? How stable can I run so that my sights stay stable? You know, how quickly can my eyes acquire the next target to a precise point? Like those are attributes that you can build, and then the skills you build are the trigger presses and the reloads and the draws and the transitions and all of that, you know, and all of that matters. And yes, the tactical skills matter too, you know, learning the tactics, learning how to do that. Mindset does matter, but all those things need to be built individually, and then you learn to assemble them, and then you work on assembling them under pressure, and then you test them. If all you ever did was an actual like replication of the fight, that would just be like testing yourself without studying the work, right? It'd be like taking the test and never reading the textbook. You know? It doesn't help you.
Yeah, in fact, when you learn something, you learn step by step. So you learn isolated skills before joining all those skills in a combined drill or exercise or anything or problem. Maybe maths. You learn maths as isolated skills, and then you solve maths problem, complex maths problems.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with anything, like, you know, whether it's shooting or, you know, hand to hand or any skill, driving, you know, anything, right? You've got to learn these things individually, and then you got to learn to put them together like in a relaxed, competent fashion under stress, you know? And here's another strength of ACE that I was thinking about. And this goes back to Eric Graffel, right? We were talking about him a minute ago. he has a high level of randomization in his training, interleaving in his training. And what I mean by that is he never shoots the same stage more than 3 to 5 times, you know,
Yes.
a lot of times just once. And that is very difficult to do in your own training without something like ACE. You know, in ACE, I can do that. I can just hit different things and mix them up and kind of get them all flowing together like that. And that's a great way to train once you have your basic skills developed, once you've done that individual skill block developing. But think about how hard that would be if you didn't have the support system Grafel has. That would be so difficult to do, you know?
It's impossible. For me, it's impossible. I can build a stage for just once and then build another one. And I don't have 11 stages available at the same time. So
yeah,
ACE is the only tool I can use.
Yeah, and you can flip through things and do them each a couple of times, and you can mix up, you know, more isolated skill work like bill drills with the big stages like the ones from the Nationals and USPSA, and mix that together and kind of go back and forth. And I think that's a great way to train. Like I said, as long as you have your fundamentals already developed, you know?
Yeah, sure. Most of the people wants to speed up before doing things properly, you know? And then you hear that the slow is fast, smooth is fast. That's quite stupid. Because slow is slow, fast is fast. If you do things slow, you are going to do things slow. So if you want to do things fast, you need to start doing those things slowly, but do them properly, and then you are going to need to do them fast as you can.
And you're going to have to learn to fail in training. People are afraid to fail in training, but you don't break through to a new level without doing that. You've got to allow yourself the freedom to fail.
Yeah, I fail all the time. The hitting the A surprised me. That's a surprise. Oh, I hit the A and not the D or a miss.
You know, and I think that not only are people afraid to fail, right? But they also don't pay enough attention to the failure.
Yeah.
Because that's how you learn. Yeah, that's how you learn. So what happened? Where was my sight when I pressed the trigger? How was my trigger press? Was my grip right? You know, were my sights smooth and level as I came into position to shoot? Like, where was the failure point? What did I do that I can make better? And, you know, I had a really cool conversation the other day with an old friend of mine. It was actually on a podcast I just recorded. And what we were talking about was learning to look at all of this like it's a puzzle and a game. People get their ego, right, invested in it. They get emotionally attached to, I have to do well every time, I have to do well now. Instead of going, oh, here's something I didn't do well. This is a great opportunity for me to figure this out, right? What can I do to make this a strength instead of a weakness? How can I tweak what I'm doing so that I don't fail? Like, how do I solve this puzzle? How do I solve this problem?
Yeah.
And I think
some people prefer to look good than prove it.
Yeah.
You know, I prefer to look good, but I don't going to do anything to prove it, because maybe you learn that I'm not good. And it's better that you believe that I'm good. So I'm not shooting in front of you.
Oh, nothing chaps me more than when someone is taught, because this happens a lot, at least in America. Not all the time, and it's not as bad as it used to be. It's a lot smaller percentage than it used to be. But there was a large percentage in law enforcement for a long time that were taught never to do demos in front of their students because they might fail.
Yes, that's the same here.
And I was like, well, if you don't demonstrate what you want them to do, how are they going to know how you want them to do it? Yeah. Right? And you have to be able to show the technique. Yeah.
Some units train with the door closed, so you can't see what they are doing, because maybe you see what they are doing and they're not as good as you thought at first. So it is better you believe they are good and keep it in your mind.
And I mean, everyone too, you're going to blow a demo at some point. You're going to get up and demo and make a
Yeah.
mistake. So you just tell them what the mistake was and why it happened and what you did wrong, and let it be a learning point. And I think too that helps the students have that permission to fail. Understand that training is a process. It's
Yeah.
not a destination. You know,
Yes.
you may want to get to a certain level of skill, but the process is how you get there, not by acting like you already have that level of skill. You know?
Yes. Yeah, sure. Besides, you can use that to show them this is what you don't need to do.
Yeah.
You need to be better than me.
Yeah. Show them the failure points, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, show them what can happen, what goes wrong. There's a good friend of mine who he was one of the first guys to like popularize appendix carry, right? His name's Gabe
Yeah.
White. And one of the things I love about how Gabe teaches is he literally fails on purpose and then tells you what he failed at. Like he'll get up there and he'll do like before he does the clean runs that count, he'll get up there and do practice runs and tell you they're practice runs, and start out, and his first runs are always very nice and, you know, very accurate and very fast. And then he starts pushing, and he gets up there and he's like, okay, that time I did this, and that's why it's a Charlie instead of an Alpha. You know,
Wow.
that time I did this, and that's why it was a 0.93 draw from concealment instead of a 0.80 draw from concealment, because I did this wrong. And he talks you through everything he did wrong on each demo. And that to me always seemed like not only a great way for the students to learn, but a great way to get people to not have any ego about the outcome, right? Because I think if you're attached to the outcome instead of the process, you're going to hold yourself back. You're not going to get to where you want to be, instead of just learning to love the process of getting better. You know, if you think
Yeah.
about the process instead of the outcome, you're going to get to the outcome. And the reverse isn't true.
Yes. Yeah, you learn from your failures. That's true. So you need to know why you have failed that shot, and then you can correct it in the next time. And it's good when you fail one day and you get success the next day, because you have corrected the mistake from the day before.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but someone said, learn to fail quickly.
Yeah.
And what they meant by that was, you know, you're going to fail. So learn to fix that failure point quickly. Learn to recognize it, see what caused it, adjust your training or your technique as necessary, so that you eliminate that failure point. Now you move on to the next failure point, because there's always going to be something that wasn't optimal, right? There's always going to be somewhere you can improve. Yeah, and I can't remember who said it, but I always loved that. Learn to fail quickly.
Yeah. I remember hearing that in some place, but I don't remember where. Hearing or reading it in some place, some article, maybe from one of your guys, because I read all the time from you, from Matthew Little, from Matt Pranka, from Mike Panone, all those guys, because you explain things great, and it's good to read you and understand what you are saying and how to apply that in your training. And that's what the people that know how to do things do. They can explain you how to do it, because they know it. They can prove it.
I think too, and this is one of the benefits, like you've been an instructor, right? I think that, and not necessarily for everyone, all right? Because there are people that are just very naturally talented, that are very gifted, and they work hard. I'm not saying they don't work hard, but they have an innate understanding of how to do something that's just kind of natural. You know, because I know people that are really good shooters that they do train very hard, but they can't really tell you why they're good shooters. You know, they don't really understand how they just think everybody should be able to do it. But I think that people that learn to teach and can perform at a high level of skill, but care about teaching well, because not everybody does. Some people just get up there and run the timer and count out drills. But people that really care about explaining to someone how to make things better, giving them coaching and mentoring and figuring out the coaching cues, I think that gives you an understanding of the skill that you'll never have without doing that.
Yeah.
Because you're
sure.
trying to explain something that you've figured out for yourself in a way that someone who doesn't look at the world the same way can understand it.
Yeah. Those are the good guys to learn from, because they can explain you 20 years of experience in just 2 days. So you are learning 20 years in 2 days. That's golden words.
Well, and if you think about it, like and I use the word generation kind of loosely, right? But every generation of people in a certain skill, a certain activity, whether it's, being an infantry soldier, or being a SWAT policeman, or being a competitive shooter, being a martial artist, right? Or an Olympic lifter, weightlifter. Every generation should be better than the one before, because they should be able to learn quicker than the generation before did, because now they have their experience to learn from.
Yes.
And I think that's important. And you see it in shooting. I mean, look at how far shooting has come in the last 5 years, even. The skill level now is much higher at the top levels than it was just 5 years ago. Or look at when you get on YouTube, if I ever do really badly at a match, if I ever like tank a match in competition, I always go home and I watch like an IPSC world shoot from like 1980 on YouTube, because I can feel better about myself, because it's come that far since then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, that's just kind of the nature of things. I mean, like, do you know who Jeff Cooper was?
Yes. Yes.
So huge influence on what we do as shooters, right?
Yes.
But think about how far we've come since Jeff Cooper.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
he wouldn't believe it.
No, he wouldn't. He was a pioneer. I'm not taking anything away from him at all. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have progressed as fast as we did,
Yeah.
But that's just the nature of it, right? And look, like, before him, like, look at like the Wild West gunfighters, right? Like, look at let's see, who's a good one. Look at Wild Bill Hickok, right? Because he was legitimately an amazing gunfighter for his time. But I guarantee you, just as a shooter, he was probably nothing compared to even a casual shooter now. Because the ability and knowledge, the ability to train, the resources to train, and the knowledge about training and technique have improved so far since his day.
Yes.
And that always fascinates me. Like, I really enjoy thinking about that, and thinking about, and going back to teaching, because I do love to teach. Like, how do I get someone else to be able to take less time to learn what I learned? How do I make it easier for them, make it a shorter journey for them to get to my skill level or beyond, right? And like, some people, I think, have an ego about it, but nothing makes me happier than when someone I've trained gets better than me.
Yeah.
Because that's the way it should be.
Yeah, that's a big success.
Yeah, that's the way it should be.
For any trainer or teacher, that's a big success. Having a student that is better than you.
Yeah, but that should be the way of things, right? And then their students one day should be better than them. And that's how the craft and the art gets better and better all the time. And it's the same thing with institutional training, right? Nothing, well, I can't say that, because Train Like You Fight and Smooth as Fast upset me more. But it's still on the list. It upsets me when people say, well, this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah. So they are shooting like the Weaver. They're shooting in Weaver because that's the way they have been doing it for 100 years. Yeah, but
this is the way we've always done
somebody,
it.
I'm not going to teach them what's the Weaver stance. It's not needed. You pass all the times how they did it in 1900s. You don't need to know it. You just need to do it to know how to do it the best way now. And if tomorrow the best way to do things is different, you are going to learn the best way to do things tomorrow. but not the current way.
That goes back, I think, to what we were talking about being willing to experiment, right? That's how the new developments in technique and training happen is, what happens if I do this? Let me try this. Does this make it better or worse? And playing with those variables.
Some people say that you need to try all by yourself. And they say, I don't need to try shit by myself to know that's shit. I don't need to trip on a rock by myself if you have tripped before. So that's stupid. I prefer to learn from your mistakes than from my own mistakes. But I'm going to learn from your mistakes and from my own mistakes. But I prefer to avoid my mistakes if I can learn from yours.
And even if you're going to make the same mistake as someone else, if you've learned the process they use to fix that mistake for themselves, it will help you fix your mistake quicker, right?
Yeah.
Going back to failing quickly and moving on, like, knowing what they did to fix it for themselves helps you figure out how to fix it for you, rather than just sitting there and banging your head against a brick wall and not knowing how to make it better,
Yeah. But it's the same in athletics, because if you see how they jumped, high jump in the past, they jump in front of the bar, and now everybody's jumping backwards.
Yep.
Yeah. Why they are jumping backwards? Because one guy started jumping backwards, and he was the best jumper in the competition. So everybody is doing the same because that's the best way to do it now.
Well, and that kind of brings up something else that I think is really important. Going back to institutions, right? Like your military service, my military service, the police. I think that there's a real reluctance to have that experimentation process. And I think that part of the reason why that happens is because people don't really train like athletes. Like we have this buzzword. I don't know if they say something similar in Spain, but people talk about being tactical athletes in the US, if they're soldiers or policemen, right? And it's true, they are tactical athletes. But the problem is nobody's training them like you train athletes. A few people are now. It's gotten a lot better. Like I said, all this stuff is improving. But look at how an athlete trains. They have a plan in place. Their coach has a plan to make them better. But all too often, at least on our side of the ocean, when a SWAT team goes to the range, it's just a random collection of drills that somebody thought was cool. It's not like, what am I doing this drill for? What am I trying to improve in my operators, my officers, my soldiers? What am I trying to make better? What skill am I trying to give them, or what attribute am I trying to improve? People just pick drills because it's a drill. They don't pick a drill to try to do something in particular. What am I working on?
Yeah. They just train, but they are not training, performance-based training. They're not training for better performance. They are training because they are supposed to be training.
Yep.
But they don't have a goal in that training.
Well, and your training should be planned out over a period of time too. And that's something you don't see a lot in these sorts of environments, right? But you should be doing cycles of training to improve certain things and kind of building on each cycle every time you go, not just training everything all the time kind of randomly,
Yeah. Yeah, you need a goal to train. I don't have a goal. I don't train for reaching that goal. I do physical training just to be in good fit. So I don't have a goal. I don't need to train in a different way. But if you need to reach a goal in your training, you need to have a plan.
And I think, here's another one. And I don't know, you tell me if it's the same way in Spain, but all too often the goal is just passing the fitness test for the agency or passing the shooting qualification course for the agency. That's the goal. Instead of the goals should be, how good can I be at this, and what do I need to improve to get to that skill level? It's just the minimum. The goal is the minimum.
Yeah,
And
that's the same here, because the goal is so low that everybody's reaching the goal.
Yeah.
The scores are very low, so you don't have problems. Because if somebody doesn't pass the test, what are you going to do with that guy? Keep it at home. So it's better everybody pass.
Yeah, and I mean, I have been fortunate enough that I've been in a couple of different places in my career where there were real repercussions. There were real repercussions for not meeting the standards, But all too often, like you said, the standards are set so low in other places that, basically everyone meets them. And if they don't, they somehow magically meet them anyway, you know? And that's not a good way to be either.
They cheat and they pass because they are cheating in some cases.
Yeah, the slang term was pencil whip.
I think that the wage should be performance based, your wage, and you are getting more money if you are better, because that's a good incentive for anybody. So you are getting paid for being better than other guys. That's I'm paying your effort to become better. So maybe people is happy trying to get better.
I would like to think that would work, but I kind of got some thoughts on that. One is that for the people who care about being the best, they're going to care about being the best anyway. Like the people that wind up going into special operations or trying to be on the SWAT team or, and the people that aren't going to care about being their best aren't going to care no matter what you do, because it just seems to be two types of people, right? And I think it's always been that way in every place and time in history. Like you hear people talking, or you read, I should say, about that in things from the Middle Ages. You read about that in things from Greece back in, before Rome was a place. What's the famous quote? Out of every 100, 70 are just targets, talking about how most soldiers don't really do any good. So it's been the same since then. And I think that's just kind of, and I'm not trying to be negative either, right? Like it's just the way it is. And actually it could be like a positive thing mentally, because if you think about it, if you're listening to this podcast and you're practicing and training, you're probably in that 1 or 2% that actually cares about being the best. So you're already ahead of the game.
Yes. It is said that if they offer you free ammo, free range, everything free, you only need to put your time and come to the range, and the guys in the range are going to be the same as before. Paying. If I'm paying, I'm visiting the range, I'm going to be in the range if it's free. But the people who are not paying, they are not going to be in the range even if it's free.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I agree with you. It's going to be, and maybe the skill level of the people that are paying would be higher because now they can do it more.
Yeah.
But it would still be the same people on top. It'd still be the same people at the top of the skill level, no matter what.
Yes. So you are not improving your unit, your organization. The key is selection. You need to select people that have that willingness, that mindset to get training, the proper training, to spend time training, that they have fun training. Because if you don't have fun training, doing what you do, you are not going to do it when you can choose.
No, it's got to be something, there has to be something that drives you, right? There's got to be that desire. And this is actually a good kind of way to take this for a minute, I think, before we wrap it up, because this is something I think about a lot. And it's really, I believe it really strongly. Like I really believe this. I think that kind of the meaning of life, right, is to try to be the best version of you that you can be. And it's a process, like we said earlier. It's not a goal, it's a process. But to always be trying to sharpen and polish yourself and be better every day at something. It doesn't have to be the things I try to be good at. It could be anything. It could be playing the harp, for crying out loud. It could be anything at all. But if there's something in your life that you're trying to chase perfection, you'll never get there, but you're trying to chase it. You're trying to get closer and closer to perfection all the time. I think that gives a satisfaction and like a self-knowledge that the people who don't do that will never have.
Yeah, sure. And you know that training people or teaching people is a good thing to do because you are going to leave a legacy when you're not here. So if you train people and they are good guys, you can feel happy with your life.
Yeah, no, I agree with that really strongly too. I mean, that's because we're all going to be gone at some point. None of us are here forever, right?
Yes.
So what did you leave behind? Did you leave the world a little bit better than you found it? Did you leave like we talked about the level of skill getting better and better every generation, right? Did you contribute to that or did you hold it back? You know?
Yeah. That's true.
I agree a lot.
That's the goal of life. Leaving behind something better.
Yeah, making the world even just a slightly better place than you found it.
Yes.
You know, giving a little bit of a better life for your children than you had, or for the people you trained, letting them, having the people you train be at a higher skill level than the people you were with had. Like making things better a little bit, just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot, right? Just that fraction, because over time that adds up. Over generation and generation, that makes everything better for everybody.
Yeah, sure.
So,
that's the way of life.
The way of life, absolutely. The way is in training. You see how I did that? I'm getting better at this stuff.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. We have gone over an hour now, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. But I really appreciate you coming on, especially with the time difference. What time is it in Spain right now?
We are 7 hours apart. It's 8 in the evening right now. 8:12.
Okay, well, thank you for spending your evening talking to me. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure and my honor to spend this time with you.
No, I had a great time talking to you, and we need to get together in ACE and do a little more shooting again soon.
Or you can visit us in Spain, and you are going to have a lot of fun here, for sure.
No, I'd like that. That'd be a good time. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I had a great time talking with him. It's been a blast kind of seeing how things are pretty much the same everywhere you go, right? When it comes to how people look at training and how people do things and all that. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this, and I will talk to everybody again next time.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Way is in Training. Please come back again as we explore how training makes us better at our craft and better in our everyday lives. See all of you soon.